Hello, I'm Harry Stachini and you are listening to the Staff Room Podcast, the show where each week I share anonymous stories from teachers who are overworked, underpaid and close to a mental breakdown. So think of it as teacher therapy, as they remind us of all the troublemakers, class clowns and the flat-out criminals we all remember from school. So join me and my guests and hear what your teachers really have to say. And we're off for the first time in a long time. Welcome back to the Staff Room Podcast. I hope you're all doing very well. And apologies straight off the bat for the fact that I think it's been about 6 months, maybe 7 months, in fact, since the last episode of the podcast. And I don't know how you've been doing, but I've had a lot of shit change in a good way. But yeah, I am... things are starting to be a bit more stable now, and more episodes will be coming soon. But you know what I mean? Summer's passed, Christmas passed. I'm living with my mate Sam and selling my house. So that should give you some indication to how busy the last few months have been. But do you know what I've been telling everyone? I'm fine. And genuinely, I am. Because when you talk about a breakup on stage, Jesus Christ, do people think this guy is losing his mind. But I'd like to think that the microphone and the jokes that I've written about it are more than capable of making people feel comfortable. But that is the reason why radio silence has been occurring, because, I've been here, there, and literally fucking everywhere. But as I say, I'm fine. I hope you're all doing very well. I don't know, you know. I know people have been checking out the podcast frequently over the weeks since the last episode, so thank you very much. And I've been shouting about this at every frigging gig I'm doing. I'm just telling teachers, look, if you know someone who has a story, please, for the love of God, send it in to me, because I'm going to come back with term 2 later this year. And I've got stories coming in already. But if you are a teacher and you've got a cracker or just something, maybe it's like a certain member of staff you work with who was an absolute nightmare, let me know, get in touch. I had a guy not last night, because last night was Sunday, Saturday night in a place called Kirby Moorside, which is a lovely part of the world up near York. I was doing a gig in a golf club because, you know, my career is peaking. No, to be fair, it was all right. It's just, I don't think comedy should happen on a carpet. That's just my opinion. But a chap in the crowd was a teacher, and he had a vibe about him like he'd inflicted some serious pain or distress onto children during his teaching days, but in a way that says, like, I'm all right, you know what I mean? I'm not a bad egg, but I liked him. So shout out to, in fact, I'm not going to say his name, because if he does send a story in, then we're all fucked, aren't we? But yeah, so as I say, term 2 will be coming. So if you know a teacher or if you've got a story, please, please, please send it in. Now, today's episode is a bit of a different one. It's actually a special edition episode, because I've not got a story that I'm going to be sharing with you. I've actually got two local celebrities within the teaching world, Mr. Lee and Adam Parkinson, the two guys that make up the two MrPs in a podcast, which, if you've not heard, I imagine the teachers that listen to this probably have heard it, but if you've not heard it, basically, I thought I'd stumbled across the idea that was really original of teachers sending in anonymous stories and then them being read out. But it turns out both Adam and Lee had beat me to it about 18 months beforehand. So I was like, right, perfect. Let's get the lads on the podcast. And we had a good old chat. I mean, funny enough, we actually all live right around the corner from each other, so very much a small world, but two cracking fellas, and we had a good old chat. We talked about loads of different bits and pieces. We talked about their podcast. We talk about both, lying kids in schools, and the fact that both of them still work in schools and trying to walk that line of being, like a public figure within the teaching world, but also a teacher. And I found that quite interesting because obviously for me, I don't actually work in a school anymore. I should have probably said that at the top. So yeah, if I was going to get sacked anyway, I was just like, well, I know I'm not going to do it forever. But for them lads, it's kind of, something that they were doing way before they got into creating podcasts and writing books and all sorts. So I was quite interested to know how they kind of walk that line. But both top fellas, and as I say, we had a good old chat. We also discuss at great length the fact when I got verbally abused by one of the lads at the last place I worked at. I won't ruin what he called me, but just the balls on the kid to call me it and then deny it was absolutely commendable. But yeah, I should say as well, I can't really remember, but I think at the time when this podcast we were recording it, it was back in August, I want to say. And yeah, I want to say both Adam and Lee, they'd even completed the book and it was being released in the next few weeks, or it had just been released. But they've written a book that's called "Put a Wet Paper Towel on It: The Weird and Wonderful World of Primary Schools," and it's similar to Adam Kay's like "This Is Going to Hurt." If you've not read that, where it's like packed full of little stories and anecdotes of what it's like working in a primary school. And I know it's done tremendously well since the episode. Since we recorded it, not that my episode with these guys has catapulted them further ahead. They're already high flying and they're top fellas, as I say. So yeah, if you've not checked out their podcast, Two Mr. P's in a Podcast, do check it out. I will add it into the show notes as well if you want to find it on the links there. I will also add in their Put a Wet Paper Towel on It as well, which I know has been very popular. And if you're a reader like me, if you like reading, just get stuck into it, you know what I mean? They're both good guys making stuff. I think it's good to champion people that are good eggs and, bringing something positive to the world around us, because, you know what I mean? A lot has changed. A lot has changed since August. I mean, as I'm recording this, I know Russia are invading the Ukraine, which is absolutely fucking crackers. But less said about that, the better. You've come to this podcast, as you do when I release an episode, to switch off, to have a bit of light-hearted entertainment and listen to my drivel. So let's not talk about how absolutely batshit crazy Putin is. And Putin, if you are listening, and you know any teachers, get them to send a story in, mate, because I imagine staff rooms in the Soviet Union are absolutely crackers. But let's get cracking with today's episode. This is me, Adam and Lee, and an absolute belter of a conversation. Enjoy. Yeah, thank you very much, both of you, for coming on this.
No, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So, who's older?
Guess.
I am going to say you, Lee.
What makes you say that?
I just you've got Big Brother vibes about you. I would say
nice save.
It's about two. Mate, people keep saying I give off dad vibes, right?
Yeah.
I'm 27, mate. I haven't got any kids, and people are going, "You're giving off dad vibes." I'm like, that's not a vibe you want to give off at this age.
Mate, I was 20 what? 26, 27. No. How old are you? Sorry?
When you had your first kid?
No, I was 20.
I'm 27, mate. Yeah.
So I was 25 when I had the triplets. So I was young. Yeah.
How many kids have you got then?
So I've got 10-year-old triplets and an 18-year-old stepson who's currently on his...
Are you having me on about triplets?
No, Adam's laughing because he knows that's like a world record for how quickly I just
gonna say,
mentioned it.
It's only taken him, 2 minutes in his podcast to mention that he's got triplets. Honestly, it's getting quicker by the time. Next time it'll be like, oh, so welcome, Lee. Oh, thanks, I've got triplets.
That's an insane amount. Did you? Obviously, you didn't expect to have triplets straight off the bat. But I don't know what I'd do with one kid. Never mind three.
Yeah.
What about you, Adam?
Just those years of training.
They do say that good things come from extremely small packages. So that's where Lee comes from. There. I've got two kids. I had my first at 26, and then so I've got a 5-year-old girl. And I've got a 2-year-old boy. Yeah.
Do you know what? This is you boys were definitely giving off dad vibes at 27.
I met my partner when I was 21, and she already had a 3-year-old. So as soon as our relationship started, I was already in that that mode anyway. So I didn't have really.
Crackers.
Yeah, we just decided as soon as we got married, we might as well add to the brood, but just didn't expect 3 in one go.
Yeah. No, I don't think anyone would. You know what I mean? That's like 3 in one go. Once they're born, you need a register for them. Like,
mate.
It's not. That's intense. That.
Yeah. It's funny though, because obviously I can tell the difference between them. So I've got 2 identical boys and a girl. Obviously, it's easier to spot the girl, but no, with the 2 identical boys, I know them. You know, I know which one's which. But still, people get them mixed up, and you're like, how can you get them that mixed up? But if I'm ever teaching twins, I cannot for the life of me ever work out which one's which. I'm the world's worst, and it's really bad the fact that I'm the parent of twins, and I'm like that. It's shocking.
How funny is it when you're teaching twins and you kind of say, like, say one of the twins puts the hand up to answer, and you go, you kind of like out at the front, aren't you?
50-50.
Jeremy? And then Jeremy will be like, yeah. And then you'll just be like, I always celebrate me. Boom! Yes! Yeah. I knew it. Just because I've given him his book. Like, knew it was him.
Do you both work in the same school?
No. Luckily.
Right, okay. Luckily. But you live, obviously, a stone's throw from each other, which Adam filled me in on earlier.
Yeah. So...
Yeah. So I work. I work in Salford. I'll just say that because I'm never going to say the name of the school.
And what's your role? What's your?
A 1-to-1. So
right.
like I work with kids that have got the behaviour issues. Ended up in that school because I'd worked in loads of different schools and Proves and stuff like that, and then a lad who ended up going to that school couldn't go to the school without having a 1-to-1, and I met the lad and his family and the head teacher all in the morning, and then the head teacher in front of the lad's family and in front of the lad just went to me, so do you want to start on Monday then? And I was like, oh, right, okay, I've got this is very much on the spot. And it was, the funny thing was, the lad who I was working with, he was, I think he was 10 at the time. But the head teacher said to him, he was like, and the head teacher was really sound, lovely guy.
Yeah.
He said, what is it you like doing in school? And he was just like, I like acting up. And the head teacher went, what? And he went, I like acting up, like causing mischief and that. And his dad was like sat next to him looking at him like, I'm trying to get you in the school, mate. Like, don't be saying any of this. So the fact.
So is it primary then? Is that where you are? Primary, or is it secondary now?
Yeah.
Primary.
No, primary.
Yeah.
I work in primary school, and I do it mainly for the fact that because outside of basically I'm a stand-up comedian. Right?
Yeah.
So like most of the time, I've always had a job that's run alongside comedy. And working in school is very flexible. Hours are great and all the rest of it. But if I'm in secondary school and kids have got access to phones, it's just a nightmare. Because this was one of the things I was going to ask both of you about this. So I've always thought primary school, they're younger, you know what I mean, less access to phones and stuff like that. So it just eliminates any kind of curiosity on their part to go like, I'm going to add you on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah.
I do get kids all saying to me like, do you want to come and play Fortnite with us? I'm like, mate, I haven't even got the game.
No.
I reckon you'd be really good at it.
I'm not into video games at all. Like my kids, they've discovered Fortnite recently, and it is just the most annoying thing in the world. Like summer holidays, sleep in, and they wake me up at like 7:00, just screaming weird stuff like "Revive me, revive me." I'm like, "What the? Where are you? It's like next to you, mate. Just shut up and let me catch some Z's, will you, please?" But yeah. No, I get asked that a lot about, what do you worry about the kids finding you on social media and stuff? And it's only more recently with TikTok, where because quite a lot of the kids are on TikTok. And so,
mate, every kid's on TikTok, aren't they?
Yeah. And so I get a couple of kids in school like, "Oh, I saw your TikTok last night." And I'm like, "You shouldn't be." I just tell them you shouldn't be on there. You shouldn't. If I see mum and dad, I'm going to tell them that you shouldn't be on there because you're not old enough. So that's a line I always play, is that at primary school they're not really old enough to be on those platforms. But then it's just making sure. Obviously, we're not, not saying anything or doing anything that could be.
That's the That's the same approach I take when a kid goes to me, why have you got a coffee and I haven't? And it's like, because I'm allowed a hot drink and you aren't.
Yeah.
So like, because obviously with both of you doing your podcast and I like walking that line of like almost public figure and teacher, but you're still both teaching. It must be like, have you had close shaves with it, or is it just, how do you navigate that? Because from my point of view, obviously there's things I do, which I'm not going to say on air because it would, identify me, so to speak. But I've always been very upfront with every school I've gone to. The teachers that I work with listen to this podcast. They're all like, no one goes, Harry, you can't be doing that. But there's just certain things that I do to try and distance myself from anything that could land me in trouble. Yeah.
I think it's just being really aware of the way you conduct, like the way I conduct myself online. So, it's very, very rare. Well, it never happens where if I make a video on Facebook or social media, I'm swearing. There's quite a lot of TikTok trends I see, and I'm like, that'd be really funny. But then just in the last couple of seconds, the sound will drop an F-bomb in. I'm like, can't use that. But I've always been quite lucky. Like in my school, I've worked at my school now for 13 years, or this will be my 14th year. And so this has all come out of working in the same school. So it's just been that sort of natural progress. But my head teacher's always been really sound. He's always just said sort of like, look, when you're in school with us, you're Mr. Parkinson, and whatever you do outside of school is Mr. P. And as long as none of that Mr. P stuff affects what's going on in this school, I've not got an issue with it. And, there's not really been, well, in fact, there's been no issues at all, really. Because I try and keep it quite separate when I'm in school. And that's what I love about my school is none of the, they don't, I could walk into a couple of schools and they're sort of, it's Mr. P. It's whereas in my school, they're just like, it's Lee. It's Lee messing about with his iPads again, which I quite like. I like that sort of just going in, doing my days and then off I go. So it's quite a separate, sort of like separated really. It's not a case of me, doing all of the Mr. P stuff through my school. It's like, no, this is just me, a separate entity. And then when I'm in school, it's like a different kettle of fish, really. So that's how I try and navigate it. But it's just been, and what I always say as well is like for a number of years, I've been quite proactive in educating our kids around social media. So that's a big chunk of what I teach at my school is trying to get children to understand that, for every good thing we get through social media, equally there's something bad, and it's all about how the children choose to use it. So as they get old enough to have their own devices and have their own platforms, I like to think they could look at someone like myself who has used it in a positive way to, have the opportunities like we've had through the podcast, through the book, through my other channels. Not that they follow me because, well, I don't know, they won't follow me because I'm not as entertaining as the other people on TikTok and YouTube and this, that, and I can't really do the dances. But so I like to try and model the sort of positive use to show that if you actually use it in a positive way, it can actually help you going forward. So that's the sort of line I try to take with it. Yeah,
I'm very similar. I mean, it's weird for me because obviously Lee, as ICT with Mr. P, has been doing his biz now for like 8 years or about 8 years, would you say, Lee?
They're 8 or 9, yeah.
So obviously I've been working in a school for that amount of time, not the same school. I kind of worked in a school, then I left and went to the school that I'm at now. But when I first joined the school that I'm at now, I wasn't doing the podcast. I wasn't really doing anything on social media. So it's kind of just been a bit of a whirlwind. I mean, we came up with the idea of the podcast on a family holiday, kind of came back and it was a bit of a slow burner, just kind of started doing it. And then suddenly we had shows and stuff. So it's never really, I know for a fact that some parents might listen. I know that some parents follow my Instagram, that the podcast Instagram that I do as myself. But like Lee said, it's very much just being aware of what you say, what you do. I mean, the book, like that's obviously out now, we had to just be very careful about, to make sure that nothing could ever come back, which it wouldn't anyway, because, we've been doing the podcast now for over 3 years and we've done 9.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it'd been running that long.
Yeah. It's been about, 3 years. And then we've done
2018 it was, yeah.
80 odd episodes, and at no point has anyone ever come in, or any parents or carers complain that I've said this or that they've said that.
Yeah.
So it's just very much, it's just being careful, but it's kind of snuck up on me. I mean, I was literally, I say I was just sat reclining watching stuff, and I still just sit recline watching stuff, but I just kind of record some stuff and write some stuff in the mix now. So but no, I always say I massively appreciate Lee for obviously all his hard work to build up the brand, to build up himself, and then he knew to reach that next level he needed something else, and luckily I was
you were there to fill the gap.
I was the secret weapon.
Yeah, you were his Bruno Fernandes. He thought, with this lad we'll challenge top 4. Are you Reds, are you Blues? What's your
Reds.
affiliation?
Reds, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. We're all Reds.
Yeah.
Nice family group here. Lovely. Because I always find just working in schools, football is always something you can relate to certain kids. And loads of City fans where I am, and it's and they're proper.
It wasn't 10
years
ago.
No. But yeah, that's interesting. Because I didn't realise obviously the podcast had been going that long. Because I think mine came about in September, October time last year, like the initial idea for it. And I thought no one's tapped into this yet about teachers sharing stories. And I was a year and a half late. But I've found from just doing this, the teachers that have got in touch, and albeit they're very different, I think because obviously you guys are very aware of what you're saying, I know you said you listened to an episode, Lee, and I suppose the staff room doesn't pull any punches,
no.
because it's all anonymous, and I don't know, I respect the career of a teacher and the job itself, but because I don't necessarily see myself doing it forever, I just look at it as I'm not hurting anyone with what I'm saying.
No.
And if someone did turn around and be like, right, you're sacked, to be like, right, well, I've had loads of different jobs. I've tested keys for a living. I was a gardener. I've done all these different things. So I was like, I'll just go and get another shit job. It'll be fine. But I do enjoy working in the schools, and I think the reason for the podcast is, in a sense, it being a niche of, it's interesting to know what actually goes on inside a school, because I imagine you two will both relate to this. I think the perception of what people see from the outside to what it's actually like is very, very different. Because you're making decisions on a second to second basis, and you're constantly having to compromise, and there's way more to it than it just being a case of 30 kids come in, sit down, get the books out, and crack on.
It's those sort of perceptions are so frustrating. You only work 9 to 3. You wouldn't do it with any other professions as well. It's like being a guest at Chef Ramsay's, like Gordon Ramsay's restaurant, and then critiquing the kitchen just from sat in the restaurant. Do you know what I mean? Because that's all people know. Unless you've worked in a school, all you know is what it was like when you were at school, and you didn't remember much of it at all, or what actually goes on. So that's what we try and sort of pull the curtain back on, is the ins and outs of it, how it's not as straightforward as just sort of playing with Lego, sitting there 9 to 3 and getting all these holidays. It is incredibly challenging, but at the same time it can be really, really rewarding as well. And like we both explore through the podcasts, just hilarious with some of the stuff that goes on, because kids are just without realising it, hilarious.
Oh God, yeah, and it's like the brutal honesty of it at times, and the sheer rudeness as well. Especially with the lads I work with, who are mainly boys. I've never had a girl who's an absolute tearaway. I don't know what it's like in your school, but it always seems to be. It's like, lads, you're letting us down.
To be fair, I've had a couple. It's slightly different with girls, I think. I think girls can be a lot more sly. Like, the thing with boys is they're just not, they don't tend to be mature enough to be able to hide. If they are going to say something to someone, they'll just blurt it out in the middle of class, won't they? Whereas with girls, it can be a lot more sneaky, more sly, and then you spend...
With a girl, they can literally, I was going to say, with a girl, they could literally, whereas a boy would just be like, shut up, like dead aggressive, where a girl could just walk by and go, ew. And then it's just kind of like,
right. What? Yeah, and that means a million different things.
Do you know what I mean? Like, just what? And it's so sneaky. It's like, you don't even see it. And it's just like, and then you just kind of like, and then the kid's crying. You're just like, I didn't do anything. And then how do you prove it? It's like that's the biggest thing. It's just like when the little like sneaky nature of some things that go on, and then you've got what I struggled to, and this is gone, from when I started 10 years ago, is when you say like you're looking at yourself in primary school and stuff, and I that's what I like base myself on, because I wasn't the best behaved child. I was in trouble quite a bit in primary school.
Do you care to share there, Adam?
I try and look at it from my kind of perspective as a child when I'm dealing with behavior or whatever. But one thing I cannot get over is I have a proper guilty conscience. Like, I always remember one year when I was in about year 4. I don't know if you remember this, Lee. Someone got given form captain or house captain or something from primary school. Right. And I asked to lend the badge for the weekend. So then when I left school, I put the badge on, and my mum was like, "Oh my God, are you house captain?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then they treated me. And I remember being sat in the car outside like the massive Tesco, because I was just about to get like a Power Rangers flyaway football. And I was like, I remember just having like a proper like dilemma. I was like, I don't think I can do this. My nana had rang and congratulated me. And I was like, so I just turned around to my mum, like in the car, like in floods of tears, like, I'm sorry, like, it's not mine. I took it from Daniel and all of this. And I know that it was like a day late, but what I cannot believe is the lying, as in like the stone cold looking into your eyes.
Right. Yeah.
Seeing them do it. Like they might have like knocked someone's pencil case over. You've watched it. You've seen it. There was no accident. There was no fluke. And then you look straight into their eyes and go, why did you push the pencil case off the table? And they look back and go, I didn't. And you're just like, what?
I saw you, mate. Yeah. I know I'm not lying. I know I'm not lying.
It's when they say I didn't as they're pushing it off. That's the worst, where they're just like, I didn't.
I had a lad pull a chair out from underneath a girl who went to go and sit down. And flat out denied it. Like, he was, quite nasty, that one. And then another one where he used to have a thing for like bursting pens, right? And he'd have like green ink or red ink all over his hands. And it would be like on the walls everywhere. And I'd be like, have you took the top off that pen and just, totally destroyed it? No, not at all. Not at all. I'm like, but why is it all over your hands? Oh, well, I've just noticed that. Yeah, I haven't got a clue. How's that got there? And I would think
the more I talk,
yeah. It's just him looking at me going, go on, let's see how far I can push you before you start going. I know you've done it. But he just, it's that like, the almost the confidence in them, you've got to admire it to a certain extent to like, you're just going to totally deny. But then I've also had some kids that have been quite switched on to the fact going, all right, prove it. And it's like, right, okay, but you say you've got the ink on your hands. Yeah. But have you got video footage? Have you got anything like that? Have you got any witnesses? And then they'd like a kid going by. Didn't I not do that? And the kid would look at him because he'd be terrified. Like, no, you didn't. He's like, exactly. See,
I love that
against me. The school's against me.
They bring the mate as a witness, and the witness was nowhere. He was nowhere near it. It's like, Jacob saw it. Jacob didn't. He was having his lunch. He's coming out with beans.
Jacob's not in today, mate. He's ill.
When you get to the nitty gritty of Jacob, and you like stood over Jacob, like, now you're better than this. Don't be getting involved in this. Like, did you see it? And then the pause. When you've got them, the pause, and then they're looking at the mate. They're looking at you. Don't do it, Jacob. Just don't. And he's like, didn't see anything. Just like, yes.
Yeah. It's as one of them, I suppose. You figure out when to lie and when not to lie. But I don't know. I always just say, like, as I imagine you guys do, it's just a case of I respect you more. Like, I had a kid, right, who this was in like the last 2 months, was titting about on the playground, right? And he was like, play fighting, you can't be doing any of that. Gets a bit rough and tumble. He's lying on the ground. He's 11, this lad, right? Literally just turned 11. And I walked across and I said, come on up, you get off the ground. And there's no one else around us, right? He looks up at me, has his arm up like that, and goes, help me up, pussyhole. And I went, what did you just call me there? And he went, nothing. I said, you just called me a pussyhole. And he went, no. I wasn't saying it to you. I was saying it to me mates. And I was like, they weren't around us, mate. I said, you literally, you made eye contact with me. You might as well have pointed and you just called me a pussyhole. Nah, that didn't happen. That I wasn't saying it to you. And I must have spoken to him for about 45 minutes. And I remember saying to him, I said, you must think I'm a proper dickhead if you think you're just thinking that's never happened. He was like, I would never think you're a dickhead. I was like, you think I'm a pussyhole? Ended up having to chat to his dad, and his dad was fuming because his dad's like, I'm really sorry he's done that. But it was the next day. He said to me, he was like, yeah, I did call you it. I was like, I know that. I know you called me it because you made eye contact.
No debating
that. Yeah, but I was like, I'd have more respect for you if you just said, yeah, I did, and I'm sorry. But just nah, it wasn't to you though. But yeah,
I'd have loved it if when you were going like, yeah, I knew you called me if you'd have just been like, you don't have to be a pussyhole about it.
I would have laughed at that because I don't know. Like my approach when I'm working with the lads is just a case of I say, like, I'll be dead honest with you, you be dead honest with me, and I don't expect you to be perfect because there's good days and bad days to everything. But just know, like, I'm not here to trip you up. I'm here to help you, but at the same time, you got to help yourself. So like, don't be a divvy. And there are times where they either really relate to that, and there's there are good days to it, and then there's other times where you kind of. I almost feel like I've got to re-explain in so many different ways what I'm trying to say. And then it's like, I don't know if I'm making any progress here or you are just, I don't know, just choosing to be difficult about it. But I'll always try and keep it light to a certain extent. And like, I don't take myself too seriously when I'm there. Because like some of the kids might call me by my first name, and the teachers, it's almost like they see it as, oh, I know your first name. It's like, it's fine. You call me Harry if you want. Like, other people do. So that's absolutely fine, and I don't have an issue with that. But I think the fact that lad called me a pussyhole there and then, I knew he would never have said it to any other member of staff. There's no way he would have. But like because. And it might be because I make a bit of a rod for my own back at times. But for instance, like say if one of the kids who's a bit of like a more physical presence in amongst all the lads makes a comment like, right, we're giving this lad a wedgie, and they're all kind of follow him because he's the biggest and the loudest. I'll make a point of going, all right, and then once we've done him, I'm doing you. He's like, you can't do that. I was like, well, you do that to everyone else all day and no one questions it. I said, and there's always going to be someone bigger and uglier than you. And today that's me. Right? and because, and it's obviously, I've never like wedgie an 11-year-old, Jesus. But that kind of, I tried to speak to him as like normal as possible without it being, like curt. But some of the language that they use, I'll repeat back to him, be like, I'm not saying this for shock factor. Like, this is what you say. All the time. So when I'm like, if a teacher says to him, think about how you make other people feel, it's like he's literally just like strangled a girl and told her to fuck off. Like, I'm sorry, I realise I'm swearing here, but it's it's my podcast. But that's the reality I find of inside a school to what like parents go, well, a child would never do that. It's like they would. They do.
I can just imagine when like you said like after we've done him, we're gonna wedgie you, and then you turn to that other kid, who's the pussy hole now, mate? Nobody puts his pussy hole in a corner.
Yeah.
No, just saying. I think you're spot on with it because like there's so many different sort of challenges, and sometimes you need someone to be able to get on a different level with that's why I sort of support staff, TAs, LSAs are just amazing because they're able to, if the teacher can't get that connection, which sometimes happens, there are certain children that no matter how hard you try, they just don't take to as well as others. So having someone like you've just described there that can get on a level and just, get through to them that way is what makes, teamwork makes the dream work, doesn't it?
Because like where you both work, what's like the faculty like in terms of, because I've had teachers that have sent stuff in that have really opened my eyes to how bad things can be in certain schools.
As far as
and I've
what?
had a little taste of
like behaviour. The staff.
Yeah, just like the staff itself, not necessarily the kids, because like I think, and I've said it on previous podcasts, but I would much rather take bad kids as much as there are bad kids in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And have great staff than have bad staff and really well behaved kids.
Yeah.
Because like that, I've worked in some places where you're dealing with kids that have got serious behaviour issues, and then you take them to the higher up, and they look at you like, "What have you brought him to me for?" And it's like, well, it's got to stop somewhere. You know what I mean? And I'm not here to babysit all day, every day. But it was just like, no, that's your problem. You get on with that. And there was no no network around you. But I'm very fortunate where I am. There is that. So I'm just curious to know what it's like where you boys work.
Yeah, I'm really lucky at my school. We've got a great staff. Always have done. That's one of the main reasons, why I'm happy and always have been to stay there, because I just love the staff, the colleagues. We do really look after each other. You don't always see eye to eye with each other, but you know that everyone's trying their best and would tend to just do whatever they can for each other, like help each other out. But I on my travels, when I've visited schools and I get sent messages, like some of the horror stories you hear about, it's just shocking. And I think for a lot of people outside of education as well, that's another thing they don't really understand, is that, you think with teachers being, intelligent, clever people, you wouldn't end up with sort of toxic schools the way you've got in quite a few places. You just wouldn't think it, would you? Like, I never thought that, because I only knew my school. I mean, when I was a student teacher, I had one placement which was a nightmare, and I just sort of didn't really. I thought, oh, that was a bit of a one-off. And then when I started at my school, it was it's been great. And it's only since I've started visiting other schools and obviously speaking to other teachers, then you just go, flipping heck, is this what it's actually like? Is this how bad it can be? And it's shocking, some of the story. I mean, I've had a few run-ins, because on my training, I speak very bluntly, and I speak very, I'm very passionate about it, because I think like teaching is one of the best jobs in the world when you get the environment right in a school. And there are a lot of factors. There's a lot of factors as to why that doesn't happen. And it can't, the government don't help. Ofsted are a waste of space. You've got like LEAs, you've got all the whole academy sort of side of things. Could be leadership, could be teachers themselves, but I just think if you can get, there's a phrase that I absolutely love, which is, a person who feels appreciated will always do more than is expected. And I think if you can get that culture in a school where teachers feel valued, they don't feel micromanaged, they feel trusted to do the job that most of them are very, very capable of doing, that takes care of everything else. And we've talked about this on the podcast before. I think a majority of head teachers and sort of senior leadership were once teachers themselves. And when you get into those senior positions, it's a completely different skill set. And so most people can make that transition, because you're going from managing a group of kids to having to manage people and adults, and there's the whole different range of challenges there.
It's because like there's 3 teachers in my family, like immediate family, and one of them is a deputy in a school in Manchester, and he's spoken to me about when you're dealing with staff, like you're dealing with people that are coming to you because like the marriage is falling apart, or the stress of what's going on within the school. So that, I think there's way more to meets the eye when it just comes to a school in general, because you think of the amount of social workers that are around certain kids that are coming through the doors, and before 9 o'clock, you've seen an email about X, Y, and Z's house being raided because of so you can't expect that kid to come in and get on with the morning task as normal, because he's had plod around his house all night, doing bits and pieces. So it's like managing that and being flexible to then also teach the other 29 kids who have, have not had that happen to them. But it's you're constantly having to like wiggle with it. But I get what you're saying there about if you've got a nice environment, I think it only does create, benefits for everyone involved.
And they then take care of everything else. So all the teachers then just take care of everyone, all the kids. So if you've got teachers who aren't, wasting time constantly having to prove that they're doing the job because of we're going to have a book scrutiny here. I'm going to observe you doing this. We're going to have a mock stead. We're going to do all this faff that does nothing as far as impact on learning, but just adds more stress onto the staff. Then that's where you get that sort of toxic culture where people do get stressed and they're going off sick. Because I personally, I don't think it's sort of rocket science to get a formula where teachers can work to the best of potential, which then has a knock-on effect to looking after the children as best. Like you said, they'd much rather have a group of teachers who are, doing their absolute best, and you can, no matter what type of children you're teaching, you'd much rather that than the sort of horror stories you hear about the way in which some people are treated at certain schools. It's shocking, really.
Well, I don't know if do you guys are familiar with Alexander Price, the provoked pedagogue? He was the chap in North Wales who he got struck off because of an anonymous blog that he wrote, which was called "The Provoked Pedagogue Came to Light" at the school he was working at. I did. I think it was episode number 10 of the staff room. I had him come on and him like talk about all the events around it, because the news article that came out from the BBC basically quoted sections from his blog, but they're essentially punchlines, right? Of comments that he was making. And a punchline, when taken out of context, looks horrendous, regardless of what it is, and context is key. So when I read it, I thought there's way more to this than meets the eye. And then when I spoke to him, and he relayed everything that had gone on, and the level of, it was corruption and fraud in the school, because it was like senior members of staff changing contracts behind other members of staff's backs, and then presenting it going, see, it says it in your contract that you are meant to be doing this. And then they were presenting with the original and be like, no, it doesn't. And then, he was getting pushed to fall on a sword that he at the time he was like, I've not done anything wrong here, but they're trying to please this parent and they're using me as a scapegoat to make it happen. And I thought, like, if you're working in that environment and you're trying, how are you meant to be the best possible teacher you can be, as well as having to deal with that in the background as well? I think he said Ofsted came in and graded the attention span of people in the classroom at like 40% of the class were paying attention, which is dreadful, isn't it, when you think about it? And he said it was just like behaviour policies. They couldn't even uphold things like taking your coats off in the corridor. It was just like the school was in disarray. And when he told me about the blog, I was like, whether you agree if it was right or wrong, like,
what sort of things was he saying in the blog? What sort of, was he speaking about his school?
Yeah, he didn't identify anyone, but the blog post he sent me was called "The Problem with Prom," and it was all about his issues surrounding prom, and it referenced the fact that the kids in the school put far more emphasis on it than they do the GCSEs and all the rest of it, and it pressures people that from low-income families to have to, feel they've got to meet the needs to look a certain way and do all these things. And he made a comment about how, like, overweight girls being shoehorned into dresses and then pushed through the town like cattle, right?
Yeah.
And that was the comment that came out in the BBC. But the feeder line to that was about the pressures of people that are having to fit into social norms or body shapes and body types. Yeah. And I thought he's not saying fat people shouldn't be going to prom. He's not saying that. But the point he's making is that the pressures surrounding it cause a lot of problems for these kids. And like, there were kids doing cocaine at the prom and stuff like that. And, it's heavy stuff.
This is secondary, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah.
I was just thinking.
Well done, guys. Wow. Key stage 2 SATs are out the way. We're cracking on. We're not going crocky trail.
We're going to do our unit in maths on measurement and capacity.
We've got an ice cream van, and then Des is coming in a Vauxhall Corsa, and we're having it. But the point he was making was all these problems within the school, and then when the school caught wind of the blog, it's a very long conversation, but essentially I was like, whether you agree what he did was right or wrong, I don't think he was trying to cause any harm. But what the school was doing was definitely wrong. And he was held out to be like, the worst one of the lot. And it was like, well, what was going on at school was way worse. And it wasn't just happening to him; it was happening to other members of staff. But he kept finding himself in situations where he was like, this just isn't right. And like he got into teaching. He said when he was late 20s, early 30s. And enjoyed the job, but there were just lots of issues at the school, and how are you meant to do your job if you've not got the backing of people around you?
Did he deny it when he first got caught? Did he deny it like a kid in primary?
No,
this blog. No. But it says you did on it. Nah.
Nah, mate.
Whilst typing it. You writing a blog? Nah.
Oi, Lee, come over here. Tell him I've not been writing that.
Do you know what? I think that's another thing, though, that a lot of people, when you get into teaching, don't fully understand as well, is the sort of dynamics of how a school is ran and all those potential. Because I always put it down to the fact that when it comes to sort of senior leadership team, you have leaders and you have bosses. And I think majority of leaders in school, that's what they are, the leaders, and doing the best for the staff, doing the best for the children. They realise that it's not about them. They realise that they might make mistakes, and they're willing to listen to staff. And then you get bosses who it's like, if they make a mistake, it's who I can deflect it on, and it's like, right. So honestly, some of the stories I get told about how people are treated is just. It's shocking, and it really does have an impact. Like, I've had a couple of messages from people who are at the point where I had one message once from a teacher who was being somewhat similar sort of thing of being bullied by the school out of the school, and she'd gone to a bridge to end it all, like left a note for a family and kids, gone to a bridge, and it was only for a passerby talking her down that she didn't end up doing it. And then obviously she got quite a bit of help and ended up leaving the school or whatever. And she was telling me that just the way she was being treated and the way she was being made to feel as a teacher, having no one to speak to or turn to. And you just think there must be so many people who go through that struggle. At the same time, I know that for a lot of head teachers and senior leaders, that can be incredibly lonely as well. And you can feel like you have the sort of world on your shoulders. So that's where it needs to be a real team effort. And you need to have people around you that you can trust and you can speak to, knowing that you're not going to be judged or you're not going to be held to account. And
similar to what you're saying there, I've had teachers say the same to me in emails. Like they've said, I've enjoyed listening because it's been a breath of fresh air, and like the fact that, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's a bit different with the stories that you guys get, because I think the teachers that send stuff into me, if they think someone's something, they'll say it. I think if I'd released names, I could have finished careers. Right? But I was like, this is anonymous, and no one's been sacked thus far.
We've had it before where we get stories, but then a couple of days later, people will go, actually, that story I told you the other day, please don't put it on the podcast just in case. I worry about it a little bit, but I mean, the stories you get are just absolutely brilliant. Like we love sharing some of the stories we get, because it's just absolutely hilarious. Sometimes it's nothing to do with school, and it just gives us a giggle. Like one of the best ones we got, and I was thinking about this the other day, Adam. Do you know last year when it was the height of the first sort of lockdown, and everyone was doing the clap on a Thursday for the NHS? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I could definitely remember it.
Yeah, so we do a feature on our podcast called "What an O." Right, we call it an O. So Adam, do you want to explain what an O is? You know which story I'm talking about here?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's absolutely mint. So basically, an O is just a really bad shout, like a mistake, or you've misheard a conversation, or it's just basically a bad shout. I've got a mate called OB. That's where the O comes from. And he used to just get loads of stuff wrong, make loads of mistakes, and just make a bit of a tit of himself. The famous one that he always tell people of what an O is he told me that he'd seen this film called The Pacifier. He said, it's a top film with
Vin Diesel,
right? but he said it's a top film with The Rock. And I'm massive on my films. And I said, oh, no, mate, it's a decent film. I said, it's Vin Diesel, though. And he was like, yeah, I know. And I went, yeah, but you just said it was The Rock. And he went, yeah, I know. He's like, Vin Diesel is The Rock. I was literally just like, oh my Christ. God. So, yeah, it's basically just a horrendous shout. So, yeah. So that's the introduction to an O. But we got this one last year, which was classic. Go on, Lee.
Have you got it? Well, I'm trying to paraphrase.
I know it off the top of my head. Yeah.
Go on then. I'll let you go for it.
So basically, a woman had put on Facebook. So it was the Thursday clap, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like everyone would go out, clap for the carers. So basically, this woman, proper like Karen woman, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Put on a Facebook live.
Because people were like that, weren't they? Like there was a lot of, you go out and yes, you should have been clapping the carers, but really it was a way in which you could judge your neighbours. You know,
we had people doing fireworks around our way and whatnot. It was like, mate, fireworks every Thursday.
Yeah. But it'd be like,
I'm doing it right.
You could see your neighbours just give each other the eye when 15 didn't come out. Oh, they're not there again, are they? Not coming out to clap our carers.
So this Karen put a status on Facebook, basically having an absolute rant going, me and my husband, Dave, have just been standing out in the cold, clapping for our carers. It's an absolute disgrace. No one else has come out. No, not a single bloody person from the road has come out. Then one comment under the status was just like, it's Wednesday, Karen. And then someone else said, imagine being a car just driving down that road. She's on her own, just going mad clapping. Oh my God. That was.
But with a real judgy face on, just judging everyone else because they're not clapping. Hilarious.
That's a nightmare, that.
Yeah.
You've had an absolute fiasco there.
Straight onto Facebook.
Because I suppose throughout lockdown, did you find that doing what you were both doing with the podcast and MrP's ICT all kind of just went up another level? Because if it's home learning, like a lot of the stuff that you offer on your MrP's ICT platform is about accessing it online, right?
Yeah. So sort of what I used to do before the pandemic was I'd go into schools and I'd do like training sessions. So schools would put me in for like inset days, training days, that sort of thing, which you'd sit through, wouldn't you, at your school as well?
Yeah.
So I was actually down in London. I think it was in Maidstone when they announced that the first lockdown was happening, and I had like a few conferences for the rest of that week that just got cancelled. And then literally the rest of that first week was every school I had booked between the March and the summer just cancelling or postponing. So I was just like, oh, that's it. My business is done for. If I can't get into schools to do the training, I'm not going to be able to do it. And then luckily about a year before I'd started a website because I was getting so many teachers wanting to access the training, but couldn't because they were either not allowed to go because schools wouldn't send them or whatever it might be, or I'd never visit near where they lived. So I started this website that just bite-sized little 5-minute CPD videos. So the idea is teachers could, jump on, find a particular app or a particular topic, and there'd be a list of different ideas for how you can use technology, watch it for a couple of minutes, and then off you go. Because I never wanted to do it in a way that was like, right, here's the lesson plan, here's the worksheet, here's the PowerPoint, because I sort of hate that approach to things. It has its place every so often, but I want to be a little bit more, I want to sort of inspire teachers to try and think outside the box and make it your own. Yeah, be more creative. And I think teachers are incredibly creative. They just sometimes need the confidence and knowledge. So when the lockdown hit, I just hammered that, and I just, we offered schools a half-price subscription for the first year, and that sort of tied us through. And then a couple of months later, I discovered Zoom, and then just started doing all the training via Zoom. And then the rest was history for my training. So this academic year, it's sort of a bit of a mix now. So if I'm visiting quite a lot of schools, they've rearranged, but then, before the pandemic, I'd only ever do sort of after school sessions, like twilights or staff meetings after school.
Yeah.
I'd only ever do it locally. Whereas now through Zoom, I can do those sort of training
there,
sessions everywhere. Yeah.
But the
podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, the podcast went through the roof. Yeah. So we started doing weekly episodes through March and from March. And because the weather was nice, if you remember during that first lockdown, it was beautiful. We'd just sit in Adam's back garden and we'd just get ridiculously drunk. Like there's a period of those lockdown episodes where honestly, they'd go on for about 2.5 hours. And by the end of them, me and Adam were well on our way, weren't we?
Yeah. I've got a couple of mates who listen to the pod, and they were saying to me that whenever they're up to date, they'll go back to right in the middle of that lockdown, because every couple of minutes you can just hear a can opening, and you can just tell we're just outside, and that was when I think the podcast really. I mean, people were able to discover it because they weren't in school and they had a bit more time, even though I know that they were still working as hard. But even that first lockdown, it was more like packs of work, wasn't it? There wasn't online lessons and stuff right at the start.
It wasn't as expected, was it? It wasn't as
So they kind of got a lot more. Like the Facebook group was growing massively. And the podcast that was when it started to be a bit like, wow, is this, because we had like a tour, didn't we, like a little mini tour arranged and that, but
and that got postponed.
It just absolutely skyrocketed through lockdown, and the best thing about it is it's not only, I mean, we love doing it, and like I'm sure you love doing yours, and it's just like when you receive messages off not as kind of like the one Lee said about the woman on the bridge, but we get some messages, or like a lot of messages from people who are just saying about like how our podcasts give them like a new lease on the job, who fall back in love with it. It's made them maybe see that there's better stuff out there, so they've decided to go for another job. And then just basically, because that's what we always say, it's a podcast, it's an educational podcast you're not going to learn anything from. But if you just give yourself an hour a week where you can actually just listen to just hilarious tales, it does make you think, you know what, it's not the worst place to be when obviously run right and things like that. Yeah. So,
and I think for a lot of people during that first lockdown, because if you were working in school, you were having to do it in a bubble, so you didn't have the time to go in the staff room. You didn't have. I think it's one of the probably most underappreciated challenges during the lockdown was. A lot of staff rooms were closed. You were kept in your own little bubble. You didn't have the opportunity, because I think that's what every teacher needs during the day. No matter how busy you are, no matter how hard your day's been, you just need 10 minutes to just go and separate yourself from the classroom and just chat to someone about anything other than school. What you watched on telly last night, what you're having for your lunch, anything like, just to switch yourself off, have a bit of that human connection beyond teacher student. And I think for a lot of people, whether they were just living on their own or, they weren't able to see their own family or when they were in school, they just had to stay by themselves. I think the podcast just really helped give those people a little bit of company. And it seemed to really, really help quite a lot of people during that time. So no, it has been, sort of a blessing really. So again, sort of at the beginning of the lockdown for myself, business wise, and the podcast, because we had our tour postponed, which we were absolutely gutted with. Actually, starting this academic year, we're in a much better. Well, we've got a book out, and we've got the tour.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the book.
Yeah, the tour's been extended for. I think we're doing 30 odd dates next year now as well.
That's insane. Are they in front of live audiences? Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got the ones that have been postponed sort of this half term, and then as of February next year, we're going everywhere. So we're like. Roughly around about 200 to 400 seater theatres. We're doing the Keys Theatre at Salford on Easter Sunday next year.
At the Lowry?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So
nice.
It's exciting, really exciting. So it's just been amazing, really. It's been unbelievable.
That's ace. So from the podcast then, leading into the book, did it all was it just a natural progression? Like, right, okay, because. Have you heard of Adam K? This is going to hurt.
Yeah. We had him as a guest on the podcast.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Because I gigged with Adam just like, I think it was maybe a month before his book had come out.
Right.
And he was he said at the end of the gig, he was like, this book's coming out, and I didn't know he was previously been a doctor.
Right. What was he doing, like stand-up?
Yeah, he was a stand-up comedian.
Oh, right, okay.
For a long time. And I don't know if he still does it now, but he used to essentially play like the keyboard and do musical comedy.
Right, okay.
And they're always like very very funny songs. And I know he used to do a lot of writing. He used to do a lot of writing for Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah.
And when he said he had the book coming out, we were in this like little marquee in Milton Keynes at this comedy festival, and he just said, please, if you're interested in what you've seen here, my book's coming out, please, please get on it. And then I think back to that, and then where we are now, like, is it still number one bestseller? It was.
Oh mate, it sold millions, hasn't it?
Didn't move off top.
Yeah. Sold millions.
Off top spot for ages.
Yeah, I listened to it as an audiobook on a drive down to Barry. Actually, I was doing some work down in Barry, and I listened to it.
In Wales, Barry Island.
Yeah. I was at a school there. And it's quite the drive. So I downloaded the audiobook and I was listening to it. And it's a weird one because it's like 1 minute you're laughing your head off, and the next minute you're in bits. I was like crying going down the M5, like. But yeah, he's just he's absolutely smashed. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's still doing really well. It's been turned into a show, isn't it? It's been turned into a
He's because he sold out the Hammersmith Apollo, doing a reading of it there to NHS workers and whatnot. But I suppose the book put a wet paper towel on it. That is, do you feel like, is this peering behind the curtain again, but just in terms of it being a book?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, it's I think like we've been talking about there, it's sort of just giving people a bit more of an understanding of the day-to-day challenges of a teacher. It's very, very light-hearted. It's very tongue-in-cheek. It's just a few stories of our time in school, our journey into getting into teaching, and then just the day in, day out challenges and hilarity that sort of goes on. And yeah, it came out last Thursday, 19th, and the feedback we've had has just been phenomenal. Like teachers, well, everyone that seems to have read it has just absolutely loved it, and we've had some amazing feedback. Just really sort of resonates with people. It just seems to capture the sort of weird and wonderful sort of life as a primary school teacher. So it's been amazing.
The good thing about the book as well is it's not like a handbook for teachers at all or school staff. If you're if you are a teacher, if you've been a teacher, obviously everyone's been to primary school, anyone who's done volunteer work there or anything. And then on the flip side, if you're a parent, if you've got kids that are going or have been or are already or are there at the minute, the book just like is perfect. It really is a broad kind of appeal to everyone, really, because it does give you that little behind the curtains look at day-to-day life in a primary school. It's filled with just absolutely hilarious stories from, like Lee said, our school days, stuff that's happened in like our old schools and with old members of staff, and it's also just like a nostalgic look as well. I mean, I think I was explaining to someone who I was at a christening a few weeks back, and this lad who I think he's like a builder, he has no interest in schools or the podcast or anything. But I was telling him about like, oh yeah, we've got a chapter on classroom crazes where we have a little look at all the old school classroom crazes from back in our day, like the early 90s, to the what's massive in classrooms now and things like that. And he was just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy it. So I forced him to get his phone out and I ordered it on his phone on Amazon just to make sure that he wasn't selling me the dream.
Yeah. Now give us good feedback as well. Yeah. All right.
Leave a review. Leave a review.
5-star review.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's sort of
I wasn't saying it to you, mate. All right,
an extension of the podcast and sort of an extension of the videos that I do on social media. So it's just sort of it's been amazing. It's been really, really well received. So just hope more and more people can read it and enjoy it.
That's wicked. That's wicked because there was a guy who sent me a book a couple of months ago now. It's called The Bastard Teacher. And it is...
Jon Snow.
It's funny, mate. Yeah. Teaching north of the wall. But he sent the book in, and he's a teacher in Peru.
Right.
And it's just full of stories from his time in Peru. And they, it doesn't pull punches, and similar to like This Is Going to Hurt, it's a fantastic read, but it's moment you're like, pissing your pants laughing, and then you turn the page and you're just devastated.
Right.
And I think it shows kind of what we mentioned earlier, when there's a good environment in a school, how beneficial that can be, and how poisonous it can be when it's not right, and how that just affects everyone. But when I thought it was a very good depiction of what it's like inside one of them schools. Because obviously they're very different to mainstream schools, aren't they?
Absolutely.
His it's worth the read, but it's called The Bastard Teacher.
Right, I'll have to.
When he sent me it originally, I was like, that's a bold title, that, mate. You know what I mean?
I know, yeah.
Because he said to me, I said, that's not your real name, is it, that you've attached to it? And he was like, oh, no. I was like, because if it was, mate, you've definitely shut the door on your career. Firmly shut the door on your career. But I think there's...
Is it Marvin Foe? Is that the one, Marvin Foe?
Marvin Foe, yes. Yeah. He's a top fella, mate. I've recorded an episode with him a couple of weeks ago. So I'll be releasing this one and that one in the next coming weeks, because at the moment the podcast is it's on summer holidays, right? Coming back with term 2 later this year. I wanted to essentially get people on like yourself and Marvin, who are teachers with a bit of personality, you know what I mean, and aren't afraid to have a conversation. And albeit you've not got to be effing and jeffing, but I wanted people that were coming on that actually had something to say, that wasn't just we manage behaviour on a smiley face chart. It's like, come on, you know what I mean? It's like he's tried to stab me with a pair of scissors. Okay.
You can always tell if you do use smiley charts.
How are you feeling?
If you do use those smiley face charts, you can always tell which child doesn't always make the right choices, because they've got the smiles going, all the stickers going right the way around the room as a way of trying to keep them in check. Yeah, not a fan.
No. And I get that they can be, you get an ed psych who comes in, who's like, this will definitely work for that young man. It's like, have you spent any time with him? No, but I'm telling you, this will work. It's like, right, okay. How heavy is it? Because he's going to throw it at me. That's what I want to know.
Yeah. It's just trying to get an ed psych in school's a challenge, isn't it? We'll come in, 2025. He'll be 17 by then.
I had a lady come in to see the lad I was working with last year, and the lad I had last year, he had autism and ADHD, and he was a sweet lad, he was a good kid, but when he was volatile, and I would always say to him at times, like, he would act out and then go, yeah, but that's because of my condition, and I'd be like, you can't always just saddle it on that, be like, I've got a condition. It's like Peter Sutcliffe had issues, right? But they're not going to be like, do you know what, Peter, forget about the sentencing, we'll let you off this time. Like, you've killed the fucking 13 people, mate. And I would say to him, I was like, you can't always go to that. And then this ed psych came in towards the later stages of the year, and asked to speak to him, and I said, do you want me to come in the room with you? And he was like, yeah, fine. So he didn't say, he just nodded. That was it. He didn't say anything. I was like, right, okay. So when I sat in the room, the ed psych was turning around to me. She was like, oh, I've heard loads about you. This and this. You're doing really, really well with him and all the rest of it. And I was sat there and I'm like looking at him thinking, and his face isn't mirroring what she's saying. And I was just like, where are you? I'm not doing terrible with him, but where are you getting this information from? But when I came out of that, I got given like a little pack, I suppose, that was meant to be used for understanding emotions and stuff like that. And I looked through it and I was like, I'm not going to turn my nose up and say, oh, I know better than you. But you can tell when you know the kid, and you think, well, they're either going to relate to this or they're not. And a lot of what you've given me here isn't necessarily personalised to them. I get that it's been decided by experts that this can work, but it might not be right for them because they're either not at that stage to have that conversation, or they don't recognise, they don't know how to go about it in a way that is actually productive. But if you're giving someone like an emotions ball and you're saying, right, you catch it and then tell me how you're feeling, I think like most of the time, if I did that with a lad, they would just throw it back at me. You know what I mean? I'm like, I tell you how I'm feeling. I'm like, right, okay.
Or they'd be feeling really good, but then drop the ball and then just be like,
catches it and then bites a hole in it. That's what I'm feeling. All right, okay.
Throws it over the fence.
When I first
it's relationships, isn't it? Like that trumps everything. If you can get, like you said there, someone who understands, when it's a good day, when it's a bad day, and has an arsenal of tools to be able to adapt and support the child going through sort of emotions, stress balls and all the other stuff, it doesn't compare.
Yeah, because I don't think fidget things are good at all. I think they only encourage kids to just sit there and sit about. And because with the lads I'm working with, other kids go, well, he's got one, so why can't I get one? It's like, you don't need one, right? And to be honest, I don't think he needs one, because he'll spend like half an hour just staring at this thing, and I'm like, and then it comes to work and it's like, I've not listened to a single word they've said. I understand you've got to have some things in place, but I was like, I'm not a fan of them fidget things anyway. But the
poppet one, is it the poppet ones?
The poppet one. I've seen one that's like, it almost looks like a snake that you can keep connecting. Putty, mate. Oh my frigging God, putty. It gets everywhere, in hair, in carpets, everywhere. I had one lad who would get a perfectly good piece of putty, mix it with soap, sanitizer, anything he could get his hands on, and then it'd be like mush. And then look at me like, why has it done that? I'd be like, well, because you've mixed everything into it that it didn't need, right? And like, well, can I get some more? Well, no, because you've ruined that one. But, well, I'm not going to do my work now. All right, well, that's not my problem. It's like, you just ruined it. And it happened again and again and again. And it would get to a point where, that's when I said about having green and red hands. I was like, have you caused that mess? No. It's like, all right, okay. But there was one school when I first started doing this type of job, where I went through a recruitment agency for it. And the guy, the recruitment agent who sorted me the job out, he was very informal, right? Yeah. And I'd met him over the phone, and then after the first telephone conversation, every time I'd ring him, he'd go, "All right, our kid," and I was like, "This is so informal." You're like giving me a job, and you're speaking to me like we're relatives. But he sorted me his job out, and he said to me, so you're gonna go to school on Monday, and don't worry, all the tables and chairs are bolted to the ground. And I remember thinking, like, if you've had to say that outright at the start, like, that makes me think I need to be bolted to the ground if I'm going into this school. And it was like, just make sure you don't wear anything the kids can grab hold of easily. And I'm thinking, is he like having me on here? And then I get there, I'm like, oh, this is why. Yeah. And that was the one time when I worked with a girl there who, I mentioned it on a previous podcast, but she was scary, man. Scary. She used to knock on doors with her head, right? She was about 13 years old, and bang, bang. And I'd be like, oh, sorry, do you want to get in?
Really?
When she first met me, the first thing she said to me was, I said, afternoon, like, I'm going to be working with you today. And I was just like, trying to be casual, and then like force work on someone. And she looked at me and she went, "Your forehead is fucking massive." And I was just like, I thought, what do you say to that? So I made a joke.
Throwing him at the deep end.
Yeah, I just went, do you know what? It makes up 90% of me, right? Just thinking I was having a little bit of a joke with her. And she went, yeah, and the other 10% is a cunt. And I realised I'll bleep that out so this can be shared with people. But that was one of them where I'm like, it's 1:30. You know what I mean? Like, what am I meant to do in this situation? Because I can't go and do maths with her, right? Because she's literally just called me that. But
she knows the percentages.
I was going to say, classic teacher and go 90 plus 10, 100%. Well done.
Yeah. I think that other 10% I was feeling at that time was fear. That was it.
Gotcha.
I was just like, where do you go from here? But that's the difference. I mean, in the perception that I think people have of schools at times. But yeah, I'll have to check the book out. I hope it goes from strength to strength. But just lastly, then, like, since you've written it, wrote it, right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wrote it. Yeah, written it. See, there you go. Key stage 2, mate. Right. The kids pull that. Sir, how'd you spell this? I'm like, you're asking the wrong person. Right. That's
Siri.
Go and ask a responsible adult.
Do I have idiot written on my 90% forehead?
Forehead. Yeah. Teacher uses it for extra board space. It's like, sir, can you just kneel down? Of course you can.
If you're working with a group, mate. If you're at the back with a group, and you just let's work through this one together.
But there's still the writing's going at a slant. I can never write on a whiteboard and it be straight. I don't know about you two, but the pressure of that, it's. I write left-handed as well, so I smudge it out. It's
I'm left-handed. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. My handwriting's awful.
But just quickly then, I suppose, with the book, is there anything since you've written it when you look back on and you think that stands out the most, or because I asked the same question to Marvin who wrote his, but I'm just curious, because it's quite, I imagine, a therapeutic process.
I mean, do you mean like one particular story or just a part of it?
Not a particular story, just like the takeaway from it. Because, if you spent that much time putting it together, you've looked at all the different elements of a school, like you're clearly both passionate about what you do. That like shines through. And I think that, as we've said before, it definitely it only does good for everyone involved. But from doing, your podcast and having now written the book, is there anything you take away from it? It's like, do you both want to carry on teaching forever? Like, what's the...
I mean, I absolutely love what I do. I think I've just sort of got best of both worlds, where I still get to do a couple of days teaching a week, but then also get to do all the training and obviously the podcast and everything else like that. So as long as that can continue, absolutely adore it. And like I say, I'm very lucky at my school with the role that I have and the opportunities that I get there to I get to try different things out, and I get to do different types of projects with the kids, which I absolutely adore. I'd love to carry on doing it. But then, one person said to me once, they said, you must really love what you do with the training side of things. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, when you get to work with if you're in class full time, you're only ever working with 30 children. But when you do the training, you're working with hundreds of teachers around the country. You're then having an impact on thousands of other children, which is quite powerful when you think about it. So, absolutely. But I think, I'd just like to think what we try and do, or what we try and do through the podcast, what I try and do through my social media, is just support, help teachers, give them a voice, give them a little bit of light relief, because it is an incredibly challenging, hard and difficult job, and just sort of represent the profession positively. Like, we do like to have a bit of a moan and a groan, as everyone does, but I think all in all, we hope it has much more of a positive impact on our profession, and shows that, teachers, we are human. We do make the odd little mistake. We can also have a wicked sense of humor as well. And so I think it's just that, just probably just showing that teachers, school staff, we're human, and that we're not as bad as some media outlets probably make us out.
I just take away a massive sense of pride. Like I said 3 years ago when we were coming up with the idea to do a podcast, if you'd have told me within 3 years we'd have a published book, a tour that's selling really well, 3 million listens, all that kind of stuff, I genuinely just would not have believed you at all. So I'm proud of Lee and proud of the fact that, what's good with me is I've always felt like that something was missing, like that I was, there was something else I should be doing. I love my job. And through the podcast, it's just allowed me to basically just joke around and be like a bit of an idiot. But actually people are embracing the fact that it is just, because I take the mick out myself all the time. I don't like taking myself too seriously. And it's just, and one thing I'll take away from the book is, obviously I'm a high level teaching assistant, and I've been a TA now for nearly 10 years. Was I was able to do a chapter, like actually write a chapter, which is a sentence I didn't think I'd ever say, on like support staff and teaching assistants, and just how pivotal and important they are in schools. And I think, like you said about like, teachers from the outside, people looking in thinking that they work 9 till 3, or, they get all these holidays. I think with teaching assistants, I think a lot of people, you average Joe on the street just think that they're just there to kind of, give out stuff or to make cups of tea and things like that. It couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, day to day as a teaching assistant, you don't necessarily have the marking and the planning and all that kind of stuff, but hands on the shop floor, it's absolutely, there's not a minute's kind of peace. And I just wanted to kind of give teaching assistants, support staff and that a good shout out, given the platform that we've been able to get. So yeah, I'm buzzing with it all, to be honest.
That's ace. And that's what I mean. It shines through that both of you obviously care a lot about what you're doing. And it's, you got to take the rough with the smooth when you're doing it, but it does make a difference if you've worked with, my situation anyway, you're working with these lads where you might have a bit of a few ups and downs throughout the year, some real bad patches, but then at the end they turn around and it's not a case of them going, oh, I've got you X, Y, and Z, but they just go, that was actually like, thank you very much. Because I think anyway, you just want to leave whoever you've worked with in a better position than when you found them. And because when they leave primary school, there's a lot of lessons that everyone learns. When you go to secondary school, like just a bit more self-awareness, like, oh, I've got to problem solve differently because if I do this, I'm going to get lamped. But no matter how many times a teacher might tell you that in primary school, it might take a year 10 or a year 9 to scare the life out of you in secondary school for you to go, oh, right, I realised that Sir wasn't actually being a right donut. He was trying to, explain to me that, I've got to do it this way rather than that way. And when a kid recognises that, you hope, well, I don't necessarily hope, but there's not been a long period of time yet, but I imagine there'll be an incident where a kid might see me do a gig, right? And for them, that might be a bit surreal. But I would hope that if it was anyone I'd worked with, they might come up and go, actually, you were all right. You know what I mean? You weren't bad. I didn't enjoy everything you did on stage there, but at school, you were all right.
I'm sort of at that stage now. So I'm like, I've been teaching for so 13 years. So like my first couple of classes, they're 21, 22 now. So I have seen them, right. I've been served by a couple of them and that sort of thing. And that's when I think you do know.
Served.
It's scary. That's when I think you do know you've had a bit of an impact if they remember you and they let on to you and they have a little bit of a chat with you. And that's happened. If it doesn't happen all the time, some of them just sort of head down, just try and ignore you. But when you do get into a bit of a conversation and that's when like obviously you've had a bit of an impact there for them to stop and take a minute out of the day to catch up with you, which is always lovely, especially when they give you extra hot wings at KFC. Can't complain.
You're doing well, pal. You're at KFC. I'm glad. Right?
I always knew you could aspire. No, it's
when they couldn't stop chewing the fingers in class. I always knew you were finger licking good. Well done.
So.
But no, that's ace. It sounds like you're both doing, great at what's going on with the podcast, with the book, and I just hope it keeps going to strength.
Thank you very much.
Obviously, is there anything you would like to plug? Because I'm going to add like all your handles and whatnot in the show notes.
Just go to the website, check out the tour dates. So we've got a few shows available this term. Obviously, you can get the book, and obviously, if you are a teacher listening to this and you want some support with technology and all things like that, you can get in touch through the website, MrPICT.com.
Yeah, then
smash him.
Instagram at ICT, Mr P?
ICT _ MrP. Yeah.
And then at to Mr. P's podcast as well, which is I do that one. Yeah.
Smashing. I'll put them both in the show notes, and I'll make sure I get it all right, so people know where to find you.
Yeah.
But I can already tell loads of people have found you. So I appreciate the fact that you've come onto me podcast, and the fact we're all around the corner. I imagine we might even bump into each other soon enough.
Hopefully, yeah, we should
never
be.
know.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, pussy all.
Cheers, mate.
So there you have it, me, Adam and Lee. And what did I tell you? Top fellas, really, really good to have them on the show. So thank you very much for coming on, lads. Go and check out their stuff. Like, if you've enjoyed our conversation, go and check out their stuff. As I say, their podcast is similar to mine, a bit more PG. Well, my podcast is similar to theirs, but mine's, definitely a minimum 15, I would say, possibly an 18, because, there's been a few C-bombs dropped in along the way. And apologies for that, Mum, because I know you've spoken to me about it. But you know what I mean? I'm 27. I'm living on my own. All right? I can make decisions for myself. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed the podcast as well, tell your mate about it. Spread the word. Whatever you can do, even if it's a case of just telling someone in the office, or I was going to say the street, and I thought, don't stop someone on the street and be like, do you listen to the Staff Room podcast? Because they'll be like, I think you are psychotic. But yeah, just spread the word wherever you can, because it does help. I've been checking out where people have been tuning into this, and I've got listeners in Vietnam now, which is, hello, if you are listening. Never been to Vietnam. I'd love to go. How Long Bay looks incredible. And obviously the Vietnam War, very, very fascinating. But that's because I have the interests of a 45-year-old man. But yeah, if you have enjoyed it, please do spread the word. If you know a teacher, get them to send me a story. And if you are a teacher, you know what I mean? I've done 20 of these now, and no one's lost their job. I've left the school, but I left the school on my own terms. I wasn't fired, right, before anyone. If I was fired, I would have done an episode on it, right, to try and get more people to tune in. But I'm going to be coming back soon with new episodes, and there'll be another special edition episode that will be released on what is the 18th of March, and that is with a fella called Marvin Foe, who wrote a book called The Bastard Teacher, and it's all about his time at working in a Peru, which is something I am well versed with, and that is a fascinating episode. I'll leave you on that, really, but definitely check out Marvin's book, The Bastard Teacher, if you want to get that. You can get it on Amazon. He sent a copy to me, and it's brilliant, really, really funny. But I speak with Marvin I was going to say to great length. We've recorded a podcast, and that'll be released on the 18th. So make sure you check that out. But until then, look after yourselves, everybody. Take it easy, and I will see you soon.